Jane, you want to just stand up? My beautiful wife. She's heard this story a few times. Not as many as me, but pretty close. And so you just got to really pray for patience and long suffering for her. I'm going to ask her if she can just help me. We're going to just show you a few overhead slides, well, not overhead, but yeah, just some photographs of Mauritius. And I've been travelling for 2 years on a kind of, I'll sit down so you can see. Oh, maybe you need me to speak into this. I've been travelling for 2 years through Southeast Asia and through Africa. And I had arrived on this small island en route back to New Zealand for my brother's wedding. This particular bay is called Tamarin Bay. It's a small fishing village on the coastline of Mauritius, just south of Port Louis. The most attractive thing about this island for me was surfing. Any surfers? 1, 2. Ooh, yes. Got 2. I knew there's some surfers here in England somewhere. You're the first 2. They've been hiding. There's just a little, that's one of the most attractive parts of it, was that it's a good tube. It's a left-hand barrel. Breaking on coral reef. Had 3 tube sections in the waves, just letting the surface know. And the local Creoles were very, very good fishermen, incredibly good surfers. And they're as black as you can get them, and I was as white as you can get them, but somehow we seemed to get on quite well. So the fishing boats we used to take out. Now the problem with surfing is that it sometimes is flat. That means there's no waves. And so you've got to pick up something else. Windsurfing was a great substitute, but not as good as surfing. And diving. I was an instructor in scuba. I had dived on many wrecks. I was a qualified lifeguard, and basically the sea would become my, I suppose, escape or my kind of major pastime. I spent more time in the water or on the water or under the water, to the point where my mother used to say, "You got fish blood in you, son." You should have been born a fish. And so I loved the ocean, and I'd done a lot of diving, but most of my diving, of course, had been during the day. But these local Creole men had taught me to dive at night. Is any night divers here? 1, 2, oh, there's a number of you. About 5 or 6. For those who know nothing about night diving, I'll explain a little bit. Night diving is, so you don't think we're completely insane and all the 6 people who raise their hands are totally nuts. Night diving is, of course, dangerous in the sense that there are sharks out there during the best of the time. But at night, we would go out on the outer reef and we'd dive off the outer reef with the local Creole fishermen. The first time they asked me to come diving, I thought they were crazy. I said, "Why do you dive at night?" They said, "Oh, we not tell you, brother." I said, "Why not you tell me, huh?" They said, "You come diving and you see, man." I said, "Okay." So I brought my diving torch because I was so fascinated I wanted to see, and I went off diving. And the most fascinating thing was during the day, lobster and the crabs hide in the reef. But at night, a phenomenon happens is that they're nocturnal scavengers. So the lobster and the crab would come out and be walking right across the top of the reef. And so your torchlight would operate just like a spotlight, and as soon as the torchlight would shine upon their eyes, the lobster would freeze, wouldn't move. If anyone's ever done any hunting, they know what I'm talking about at night. So they'd freeze, and we would dive straight onto them with our leather gloves on, pick them up to the boat, throw them in. Great diving, isn't it? Seems too easy, really. But there's still a little bit of skill required in getting them, but not much. The other amazing thing about night diving is that the fish go to sleep. Remember the first time Simon, the Creole brother that taught me how to night dive and called me over, he signaled for me to come over with his torch. As I came over, here was this 15-pound parrotfish lying on its side, sound asleep. He looked at me and smiled, pulled his knife out, and bam, straight into the head. Now, I hope you're not vegetarian, so I'm sorry if you are. I was for a couple of years, but so anyhow, I killed the fish, went straight into the head with a knife, took it up into the boat and threw it into the boat. And Simon turned to me and he said, Ian, make sure, when you kill fish, brother, you hit the head, No good you hit the body or the blood come from fish, shark come for you, and for me, man, not so good. So he just worried to make sure that the young, apprentice here would learn that you kill the fish, you don't wound the fish. So I learned that lesson. As I'm diving along, I remember, now the lagoon is really pretty, but when we're diving, it drops off very steeply, 30, 40,000 fathoms into deep ocean trenches. So we're right on the edge of a mountain, submerged mountain, basically. And I was looking out into the never, out into the real dark part, just fascinated to see what was out there. Well, Simon came racing over, grabbed my torchlight, dragged me to the surface, and he said, Ian, not so good, do this with torchlight, brother. I said, why not, Simon? He said, wake up shark, Well, he tuned me in pretty quickly, Don't want to wake up Jaws 1, 2 and 3 out there. And so I just learned to keep my torchlight very, very restricted, like on the reef. The other thing about night diving is that the coral reef in the tropics are very sharp. And so I used to wear a wetsuit, not because the water was cold. For me, the water was very hot. But I wore a wetsuit to keep myself from being cut on the reef. When you're diving at night, it's not that easy to see everything. Your torchlight is very restricted. You don't want a broad beam. You want a very narrow one. A bit like those Star Wars movies, those Jedi swords. That's what it looks like underwater. And so you didn't want to brush against the reef. So I wore a thin wetsuit, very thin wetsuit, 1 mil. But I left my forearms free. I didn't think I needed to put a full wetsuit on. It gets too hot. And so I had my wetsuit came to here. The other divers had full wetsuits on. They had full steamers, which is 3 to 4 mil, full suits, leather gloves, rubber booties, and a rubber hood. Now you wonder why? Well, they were local men. They had been raised in the tropics, and to them it was winter. Can you believe it? It felt like the Caribbean, very, very hot water, beautifully hot, but to them it was cold. Some nights they go, oh, Ian, so cold tonight. I said, Simon, you're crazy, man. And he said, no, very cold for me, And we'd dive for 3 or 4 hours. We would get maybe 50, 60, sometimes 70 lobster, number of 15, maybe 20, 30 parrotfish, depending on how we did for a dive, octopus, cuttlefish, some squid. We'd come in the early hours of the morning, about 3 or 4 in the morning, wake up the chef from the local tourist hotel and begin to barter. This is their livelihood. We would bring this home. In fact, this is a dinner. I laid it out on the bench there just before he ate. About 3 in the morning one night, this is what we bring home and eat. It's nothing like eating fresh seafood. Love this stuff, and including octopus. And so we were living like kings, and we were basically living in the tropics for $1 a day in a 3-bedroom bungalow on the beach, $1 US, and we were eating seafood like this. The tourists were paying $100 US a night down the road at a place called Le Mans, and we're having to pay on top of that for their menu. Now, I was a traveller. I'd learned how to travel very cheaply, and I'd been doing it for 2 years. I had 4 days to go before I was to leave the island, and Simon came to me. He said, Ian, you come diving tonight, man. I said, oh, maybe, Simon, we look out. I looked out into the sea, and I saw an electrical storm on the horizon. I said, Simon, not so good tonight, huh? He said, no, this won't miss us, brother. Come. We go a very special place near Black River, Rivière Noire. Please come with me tonight. You see the best diving in Mauritius. Like a good fisherman, threw the bait out. I caught it, and we went diving. As we dived in this particular night, the 2 divers went in before me, and as I dived in, my torchlight picked up in the water this unusual-looking jellyfish. Now, it may not seem strange to you, but for me it was a little bit different in that it was box-shaped. Torpedo-shaped or bell-shaped at the top, but then underneath it, it was a box shape. It's not so clear in this photo, but it's the best I could find in an encyclopedia. Unbeknown to me, this is what is called a box jellyfish. Another name for it is sea wasp. The toxin of this particular jellyfish is lethal to man. It has killed in Australia, in Darwin alone, over 70 Australians. I think a few years ago it stopped a 38-year-old man